Hey there, what's going on? Jerry, the East Coast Viking Hanley here with my good bud, Jonathan Pishner, or JP from Apex Counseling. So we're ready for our first September broadcast here, talking about gratitude. So this is one that we talked about because sometimes with the subject matter we're hitting, some of these can be on heavier topics, like some of the more recent ones involving grief and loss, and also just trudging through the day every once in a while to get it done. So, kind of flipping the tables on that a little bit. So, we're going to talk today about how gratitude can actually help you improve your mental capacity, your mindset, and turn it into a habit. Hopefully your happiness level through your whole life. So, go ahead and bring it to you, my man.
So we ended up talking about this. I don't even remember how it came up, but there's things in psychology that turn into fashions sometimes. Mindfulness was one for a while, journaling was one for a while, and then gratitude kind of came around. And whenever these things enter the popular consciousness, one of the things that's important is most people become aware of a really watered down and impractical version of it. So we wanted to spend some time like how to do this in the practical sense because most people have come across something on social media of like, okay, it's good to have gratitude, but sometimes they come across the kind of like kitschy version of it that's really just not going to work very well because it's kind of weird stuff like take a breath and feel how grateful you are for that breath and those kind of things which most people don't connect with very well, but almost
Yeah.
everyone can connect with gratitude very, very well if they have some practical ways to do it. So that'll be our way of helping for the day.
Yes, you shouldn't be looking at it as a way to, like ignore things that are going on in your life or around you or like people you love and care about or as a way that's going to magically fix like some of the hardest things you might have to deal with. Like this isn't and unfortunately or just accidentally one or the other, sometimes that's the message that can come across. Like sometimes people are actually trying to purvey it that way, that is how it works, and sometimes that's just the message that people hear because it wasn't communicated in the best way for them. Like this isn't a Mahatma Gandhi style gratitude who can go through crazy stuff, not eat, go through those huge strikes, and still just keep a couple good things in his mind, and like and just endure through crazy amounts of like starvation or something, or I'm going with that. But it's like I was saying, like,
Yeah, yeah, that got extreme quick. Like,
yeah, so like what exactly is like this is not looking to like talking about extreme gratitude that we're like one like, oh, I'm glad that at least the sun is shining outside and that's it. It's little things that you can really connect to pretty much any day, anytime, and ideally help you get a more regular basis of just being in a better mindset.
yeah. So, one of the things when it comes to gratitude is most people, if you say, "What are you grateful for?" That's one of those questions. Since people don't think about it very much, it short circuits a lot of people. And so, one of the reasons that gratitude has to actually become a practice is because we very easily become used to things. And so, what will happen is we actually have a ton of stuff that we are grateful for and we would have gratitude for when we stop and think about it and we bring some mindfulness to it. But if we don't bring any mindfulness to it, it's just very easy for us to think, here is the way life is. As a person who went for about 30 years before you ever owned a car with air conditioning in it, uh, I still kind of like have an awful lot of gratitude just for that because that's still a newer thing in my life. I've only had a car with AC in it for like 7 years,
Wow.
and so it's
It's
very easy for me to like remember. Oh yeah, when it's 100 degrees out, my life used to be pretty miserable driving to work, and now it's okay. But now, as I'm getting used to it, I actually have to intentionally send my mind back to, oh no, this is a thing that's good. It's not just the way life is. And most people, have to spend a little time if they're going to utilize a practice of gratitude, figuring out, oh, what are some of the things that I presently take for granted that maybe it's easy to not take for granted if I just give it some thought.
That's a great point, and especially pointing out how easily people can forget things being good or that they were might have been grateful for, but sometime, but like you said, you get used to it very quickly, especially in this time frame where human attention spans are being shown to drop. It we're like that when it comes to remembering that we're happy about something or that something's good too. If it remains in our life, like just like you're saying with the AC, very simple to just kind of forget about that and then just simply take that as a new normal. Then and if you're no longer really thinking about how how nice it is to have AC in that point, then you just start focusing on looking elsewhere for it. And I feel like another place that this really helps is in terms of remembering, like, or remembering positive aspects, because I know you've said before how the human brain is wired to focus on negative things or remember negative things to give them more weight than they pretty much blow them out of proportion. So
Yes.
by helping to rewire your brain thinking about different things you're grateful for and you really are grateful for, then it can help balance out some of that those negative undertones.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because I hadn't thought to mention it. But yes, you have to intentionally send your mind to the good stuff because your brain will notice the negative very readily.
Yeah, because I think, man, like you'll be able to better tell me how much this fits, but I'll never forget the 5 to 1 like negative to positive stroke thing that you gave in BNI one time.
Hmm. Yeah, and that probably honestly fits everywhere. Like five positive thoughts, experiences, etc., to one negative is roughly in balance because 1 to 1
Right.
will remember the negative all the time, all
Yep.
of the time.
Yep. So I think so. One of the keys for this, like for an actual practice of gratitude, are one big one up front is just don't overthink it. Again, don't try to think of this as some complicated action that you need to try to take, some big crazy complicated system, because that in itself will probably stop you or at least slow you down from implementing a good gratitude practice or system. Is
Mhm.
keep it as simple as it can, because it really can be as easy as like trying to make a normal time of the day. Like I personally know a lot of people who do this first thing in the morning. I personally actually try to do it last thing before I go to bed or that, but just a regular time when you make it a habit or first establish it as part of your routine, and then ideally it becomes a habit to go over, say, 3 things you're grateful for, 5 things I'm grateful for, just something like that. Just nice and simple. Establish a few basic rules. Like one is try to not repeat anything too often. Again, I mean, like some people say never. Again, this is a personal thing, you know, but I personally just try to not use something too often. Like I don't want to say I'm great. I have gratitude or I'm grateful for the same exact thing every single day. Um, and really the only other rule is try to make it something that you actually are grateful for. Even if it's basic, make sure that you actually think about a way, like give it enough thought to realize a way that you are really grateful for it. So then that's when you acknowledge it. That's when you kind of get the power of the gratitude. And at that point, you've become grateful for it.
Yeah, although I'm curious, because the second one is essential. Like you have to actually be happy or grateful or that you have it. What's the purpose of not repeating?
Yeah, it's more so just because there are like if you use a number like 3 or 5 things, like I do 5, but there are more than 5 things that I'm grateful for. Definitely more than 5 things that I should be grateful for. So if I start using the same thing over and over again, almost just becomes like an easy way out,
Hmm.
and it can like for one, I don't want it to become where I'm just putting things down to put them down, which would violate one or two. So if I had go tos, it might risk that. But the other one is just to make myself think of other things, because again, like like family, opportunity, the people at my business, my employees, like the clients, the relationships there, like living situation. Those are my typical go tos when I'm thinking about that. I try to just not repeat the same ones very often, so I can at least kind of mentally call my attention to different pieces of it, and maybe even just think of some different things I haven't thought of every once in a while.
So you're describing a somewhat, I'm going to say, ritualized gratitude
Hmm.
practice, it sounds like.
Yes,
Okay. Do you write stuff down? Like, what do? Do you have like a little gratitude journal
I
or?
actually do. It's on the computer. I actually use a an app. Um, it's called. It's funny because it's from like one of the mastermind coaching groups that I'm in, ironically named Apex, but like Apex Entourage, Break Free Academy. But anyway, the actual name of the website is, or it's an app, but technically a website, is just dailygcode.com. It does have a password to get into it, I think, but I mean, it's super basic. It's just the first question, though, is what are 5 things you're grateful for today?
Okay.
Yeah, so I actually do write it down. But so you can
Okay.
do this just as a put it in your phone, write it in a notebook. You don't have to even write it down if you just make it a habit of thinking about it.
Well, and that's what I was about to point out, because there's one thing, because we were using certain words that I'm always sensitive towards. We were using words like, practice and method, and one of the things that I think a lot of people get, let's say, maybe intimidated by, or causes them to in some way not implement this,
Mhm.
is sometimes that's adding in another thing to practice and another thing to have a methodology around drives some people off,
Yep.
because whether you do it ritualistically, like you are, or just kind of like la di da whenever, like I do, because I just
Mhm.
kind of do it whenever it occurs to me. I think one of the things that it would be wise to point out is that this is not like, a 45-minute thing. Most of the time, this is 60 to 90
Mhm.
seconds. Maybe not even that, depending. And a lot of people lose track of that, because since we're talking about something that's important to add in, it feels like the gravitas of it feels like it should have more time or something. But
Right.
really, when you're adding this into your life, this is much more like adding in the practice of drinking more water. You can set a timer and do it at certain times, and you can have methodologies, or you can just drink water whenever and make sure to get it done by the end of the day.
Hmm.
The power of suggestion right there. Since
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
and so, if I was going to point something out to the people listening, it would be, if you are noticing that it would be useful to add a gratitude practice, know that it takes very minimal time, no matter what you do. Uh, and a thing we haven't got into yet is, like, how does this actually positively impact people? And man, I really wish I could. I should have bothered to actually pull up some brain scan stuff, because I'm sure that this research has been done by now, but sadly, I didn't think to, so I couldn't comment on, oh, yes, it does this to the neocortex, and the limbic system does this. But the thing that I know it does do, without having to look up specific mechanics, when your brain is in a negative space versus in a positive space, your emotions will drift in the direction of your thoughts. The more positivity you bring to your thoughts, the more your emotions will drift in that direction. So, the practice of gratitude, what this does within the brain, is it creates a situation where, since you are intentionally bringing some of the most positive thoughts you can, gratitude is, if we made a hierarchy of positive thoughts, gratitude is like kind of towards the top of the hierarchy. You're intentionally creating a situation where your emotions will drift in those more positive directions, or at least drift away from negative stuff. As a good example, one of the things I try to do, I've mentioned a couple times in this broadcast, where I had a bad injury, I had a nerve injury from my back, and it so happened that I had a friend who was undergoing back surgery at that time for a different type of injury. Mine was muscular. Hers, she had a disc, and they had to remove a bunch of stuff from her spine, and it was a mess. I saw pictures. One of the things that helped me a lot to not get too negative was to attempt to be relentlessly grateful for the fact that mine was purely muscular and was going to go away without surgery and without having stuff pulled out of my spine, which is a pretty dangerous procedure, versus, her, she had to do all this stuff. All I had to do was shut up, do my PT, and wait. And being as grateful as humanly possible while you're in pain helped a lot with me not getting into too negative of a place, because within the brain, I was kind of like yanking back against the negativity in a way.
I think that's one of the most valuable ways to express gratitude or use it for yourself, is to just consistently keep trying to point your energy, like I said, in a way that, because basically when you describe, like, your mental thoughts and your emotions kind of following that, to me that's what I've always felt as energy. That's just been always been like kind of my term, my thought process behind it. And I know that it can go again, especially if things go wrong, especially if it's something you're really looking forward to, something to see, a why me type of moment, like an injury could be. All those things could very easily turn energy negative, and
Mm-hmm.
using it to just keep guiding the energy in a more positive way, uh, like helps a lot. And I feel like it's great when you do it purposefully. You're thinking about it. You actually think, you think you actively do that. But also, the more you tend to do it, it is one of those things that becomes more natural and more involuntary. So I've found that as I actually started thinking about gratitude, the more I start just seeing it through the day more often as well. So
Mm-hmm.
again, especially if I'm struggling with anything that I've voiced out loud or not, if I happen to see something or just be reminded of something better or a better situation, it can be this is why I'm doing this, or this, or just this is not as bad as I think it is. It'll help me realize that in the moment more, and then be able to apply it. And I kind of, instantly feel that, whether it's just better calm or better headspace for a while, just because able to notice it more. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, I feel like, without, I don't want to put it too much in like actions or thoughts in my words for them, but I feel like I see a lot of people who don't do that very well. Like they just do, they are not able to flip that switch slightly, or think about things in a positive light very much when things are going against them. It seems they are having more obstacles, more issues. So I do feel like there's a practice to it, whether purposeful or not. But definitely, the more you do it, the more natural it becomes.
Yeah, and that's honestly one of the reasons I brought up how things can become fads in psychology, gratitude included, is because what you'll find is that there's a lot of people who have difficulty with some of these practices, not because it's terribly difficult, but because sometimes it's been presented to them badly. I distinctly recall having one client who literally said to me, it was first or second session. I said, "Yeah, I think I have a few things we can help with that." And she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're not going to have me do a gratitude journal, are you?" And I wasn't. That was not the intervention I had in mind. But what that let me know immediately was that somebody had suggested that in the past, and it had been suggested very, very badly, or at the wrong time, or unskillfully, or something. Uh, because so a lot of these things that have become fads, I'm always like really want to front load how it's important to do it right and come by the information correctly, instead of like, in a lot of people
Mhm.
present it in this woo woo, like, oh, just think of things you're grateful for and everything will be fine.
Yeah, and well, like that's a perfect example, I think, of the timing, or can be, that I was trying to explain earlier when I went really deep too fast. But it would be, yeah, like let's say somebody loses a job, like, they're suddenly unemployed. They didn't see it coming. Like if they're working on it, they're trying to make things they're trying to figure out, their next steps, getting that together. That can be a good time to start thinking about, like, what are some things remaining that you still have that are grateful for. The fact that maybe the job market's doing, like, overall doing well. This can actually get you a better job with better pay or benefits now. Like,
Tell you what, let me know to point out
yeah.
a step that gets missed, because if this step isn't there, a person's not going to be able to do it. Because here's the step that gets missed a lot, which is, since people easily assume that events are the drivers of their emotions versus like them having internal tools to work with their emotions, they're not ready to deploy anything, because a lot of them believe like, oh, I lost my job, therefore I feel bad. Which the much more complicated and correct way is, that's one piece of it, but you have a lot of internal stuff that's happening too. The decision that has to get made for a person to deploy gratitude correctly is they have to decide, well, okay, I'm in a bad circumstance, but I am now going to do everything I can to feel well. And therefore I'm going to like try and find the things I'm grateful for. Because what happens a lot is people suggest to them, hey, you should think of the positives. But if people don't realize that there's an internal set of things they can do to help themselves, that just comes across as insensitive when people
Yeah,
suggest that. But when
that
people
makes
know
sense.
that they can do something within themselves, and kind of commit to it, then they can do exactly like you're saying and start finding, what are the things I can still be grateful for? Oh, good. I have a month and a half before I run out of money. I can be grateful that I've got 6 weeks to find a job, or whatever it may be.
Right. That's a more expert way of saying, yeah, what I was going for with the timing. Because I said, like, for us lay people, I was gonna say, like, the other case would be exact same situation with somebody who's gone unemployed. They didn't see it coming. Maybe they have $6,000 of bills that they need to come up with in the next 2 weeks. They need to be thinking, and, like, hopefully anybody is coming at them, they need to be thinking how to solve that problem first and foremost. That's gonna be their blinders, is that thinking of other things that they're grateful for, other things, like, okay, you still have your house for now, you still have your car, you still have your family, you still have your health. Those things aren't going to have the weight that they could in a different situation if your blinders are set on a much more immediate problem.
Right, and the problem you're describing, being money challenged in that way, once you're in a survival scenario, uh, you functionally can't really utilize gratitude very well. It's not
Yeah.
this practice will not work. You have to solve the survival scenario first, then you can use this stuff, because what this is, the gratitude practice is a method for thriving. But if you're worried about
Ooh,
surviving, you can't use thrive methods. You got to use survive methods.
ooh, that's a quote there. It's like, you say the coolest things, man. Event driven emotions versus internal tools, survival scenarios. I don't have cool stuff like that.
And what's funny is, I really wish, like, when it's time for me to put up my own YouTube or Facebook videos, I really wish I could just pop on the camera and think of that stuff. I literally have to be talking to someone to be able to think of that stuff.
So, yeah, I'm actually making myself a note. Go back to about minute 23. That was great. But yeah, but, like, so I mean, I feel like, we talked about most of the things that is, so people, like, a lot of people don't understand, like, sincere gratitude, or they understand it metaphorically, but they don't think about it that way when they're thinking about how to do it on a daily basis. Again, just remembering what's important, or not what's, again, like, you see, it's even hard to explain sometimes, but a lot of people just don't understand how to think about it in a way that's actually going to help them. There we go. And then a lot of other times it's just the timing of it. Like, so a lot of times I don't understand that difference between a thriving mindset. That was awesome. Like, really using it to thrive. So when you're in a good situation, how can I continue to make things better? Versus how to, like, when you're struggling and you're in that survival scenario, completely different mindset where those things just like you will still know they're important. We're not saying they're not when you are in that survival mindset. Like you completely are aware that those things are important. Probably not non-mental professional, but but like you said, like being aware of it can't help when there's just so much stuff going on that you feel like you need to fix, so many
Yeah.
fires to put out, and you need to survive it. But yeah, like using it when the timing is right, I feel like. And so for me, like I said, I am on the ritualized side of it. That is why I do it. But it's for me because it helps me keep it top of mind. And at least for me, it does like that daily scenario of it at least does help me like think about it more through the day.
Mhm.
And really, I would say that's the ultimate goal is that simply to be aware of it more so as it happens, kind of like you said in your case, more of a just through the day, you think about it when it happens. I feel like that would be the more ultimate goal because then you're really using it throughout.
Yeah, and but the thing you're saying is you do the ritual so it keeps top of mind throughout the day, and I would agree with you. You're right. The goal is keep it top of mind because that brings that level of positivity forward more times in a day. So let's talk about like practical things people can use because the neat thing about gratitude and using it for mindset improvement is that when you are doing that, the methods people will use are so individual, and the things they will focus on are so individualized. Because the stuff that I focus on, most people would have fairly minimal interest in. Because where I'm a student of history, I focus on things in a very different way. I am because history interests me. I'm keenly aware of how the idea of having running water is so new. So, like when I go over and fill up the Brita pitcher, I'd say about a third of the time it occurs to me how nice it is that I don't have to go to the river and drag out 6 buckets of water to carry back because I've only for a couple weeks at a time, but I've done that in my life. I've lived in the wilderness or wilderness-ish areas where you got to go to the river and bring back your water, and
Mm.
that's a thing where like I bring that to top of mind, and there are still people in the world who don't have running water,
Yeah.
so
And
that
that
is
helps.
an actual gratitude practice for
Yeah.
me.
That helps when you find yourself in the situations when it's not like that too. It helps it helps even those out. Well, yeah, yeah. Like when
Well,
I
you
moved into
practically have to have been there for it to be emotionally connective to you.
yeah. Well, like when I moved, into the new house 2.5 months ago. Well, that's something I'm still grateful for all the time. By the way, is the house, but I had to do that because for the first time in my life, I suddenly had somewhere where I was having a lot of problems getting internet access. It's like it was just rural enough where like nothing existed, and the seller didn't have any cables or anything, and it was like I never thought this was going to be a problem. And so going through it, it was like basically eventually got something that was good enough. And the fact that I, use hotspots on my phones and stuff like that. But I mean,
Mhm.
it's still not good. Like, I mean, I still run out usually of access a few days before it resets, like on my hotspot. But now that, like, again, like the gratitude mindset in a way helps me not be as aggravated with that because I realize it's more of a nuisance and just something not going the way that I wanted it to, rather than being an actual issue or even taking it personal, which I can definitely see.
There's a gratitude practice one of my clients told me about that I completely stole from that person because I loved it so much. His gratitude practice is to view something as a quality problem. And what he would be saying is, "Oh, so I don't yet have internet in my beautiful new house that I love, and that is the worst problem I'm facing right now. That is a quality problem."
Similarly, one of the things that I do tend to list a lot, or like think about a lot, is when I fail at something or something goes wrong, assuming like if it's something that I had the ability to do, which in our society now is thankfully a lot of things that because I have the ability to do or to do it again and do it better, or just get another shot at it. Those very frequently make it on my list or in my thought process. So it would be the same type of thing. I feel like a quality problem. Like
Like what? What would be an
I
example?
mean, say it was a bad month in the business, or just it didn't hit the targets. I'm like, like it's pretty awesome that I live somewhere where I can do this, and I know that we'll be able to, we can focus on making it better next month, or we can do what we can to make it better next month. Or same thing with like an investment. An investment goes wrong or something. It's like, okay, I lost money on that, but I'm glad that I live somewhere where I can do this and have the ability to like make it back.
Yeah, and okay, I've got enough money to try it again. Like I'm not destitute now.
Right, exactly. So kind of
Okay.
taking like just taking negative things and thinking about the bit like how it does provide, like I said, in this society and this like it's usually a sign of opportunity
So,
or that
so,
we
so
have it.
for the people listening, the thing that would be good to be doing is, as me and Jerry talk about, the stuff that we automatically gravitate to is what's the stuff you emotionally connect with, and not necessarily out of what we're saying, but these are things we emotionally connect with. But for gratitude practice, it has to be stuff you actually emotionally connect with. And those become reasonably obvious as soon as you think of them. So if you're thinking, well, is this a thing I could be grateful for, and you're not very sure, probably it's not that,
Mm.
because whenever you're doing a gratitude practice, if you find something, you connect with it somewhat instantly. I want to be cautious about saying like instantly, but it's usually fairly obvious to most people. Like, yes, here's a thing I know I can be grateful for on a regular basis.
Mhm. And I would say like take that and like when you find good ones, like let yourself, if you're feeling in that little bit more introspective mood, dig a little bit deeper into it. For example, like most people who, just one example, most people who have kids are gonna fairly quickly say they're grateful for their kids, but if they can, that's kind of that like surface immediate answer with that. But if you want to think about it a little bit more, it might be like you're grateful for what you're able to do with your kids. You're grateful for the time you're able to give your kids.
Hmm.
You're grateful that you are providing for your kids. So whenever you're having like doubts or things are feeling stressed and negative, there's a good chance that like something has broken down in those places, and that's where you can really like kind of focus on like making that more positive, focusing on that, not letting that get out of hand. Like I mean, I feel like in this day and age, an economy being crazy, provide like whether or not you're providing, and with economy plus inflation, providing for like a family might be a little bit harder than it was at a different time in the recent past. So if that's the case, that structure may be fraying a little bit, just because you're more worried. It's a little bit tougher right now. Numbers aren't adding up. But if you can remember that what you're grateful for, the ability to do that, and that you're grateful for having done it in the past, in a belief that you can do it again, that can help kind of mitigate and contain just like negativity that might come out of that.
And see, mine for that is so different than the one you just came up with. Because me, back to student of history, is, I'm like, okay, yes, the economy is a little rough right now, and my money doesn't go as far, and I bring my gratitude to, and I'm still living in a period that is better than 99.9% of human history ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about that one a lot too, actually. I'm like, oh yeah, like the things are actually pretty good. Like,
Yeah, because one of the things, whenever I just went on vacation, I almost always make it a point to hit a museum at least once, and I'm sitting there looking at all the stuff and be like, oh, here's what they used to cook with, and I have a microwave that you know Uh, and of course, I've done some outdoorsy stuff, so I'm sitting there trying to imagine, like, okay, but if you don't have the right type of wood to make that oven work and get it hot enough, then you can't cook as much. So I'm sitting there kind of imagining all this crazy, like, how am I going to, make this thing work that I'm looking at through the glass? And then I'm looking at, oh, gas stove. Yeah, this is way better. This is way easier.
yeah, like potentially maybe hijacking this because I'm curious to see what you would say about this. I do that a lot with reactions. Like I'll think about a lot of things that happen now, and yeah, like instantly think about them, like you said, in the history or in the past. And it's like if people didn't react about it too hard then I feel there's no need to react about it strongly now. Um, like no political issue here at all. This is not about that. But for example, like, most recently, pandemic wise, a lot of people have a specific reason, like obviously specific reasons. But I mean, for me, was not worried that like something like that. Because I'm like, okay, there have been plagues, there have been all this stuff, and overall, people made it through, and we're in a better situation now, like just society wise, like you said, like we have more capability than ever before. So I feel pretty good about our ability to get through this, and my personal ability to get through this. Like kind of like that. I do a lot of things like that.
Yeah, like that rings no bells, that twangs no emotional strings for me. So that's not one I would use. But I mean, if it works as a point of gratitude, then how can I argue with it?
No, yeah, it's just like a way of like just thinking about history. That's basically why I brought that in, just like your mentions of history there. Like I use it like that a lot, like that type of comparison.
But it's a wonderful pointer to like how difficult it is for us to say, here is what you should be grateful for,
Oh, that's a great point.
because that twangs your emotional string, does nothing for me. If 50 people are watching, five of them might be like, oh man, yeah, that's one, and then 45 might be like, no, that's not the one for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a great point. Yeah.
yeah, 'cause this is just so individualized. That's why, like, as I was thinking about this earlier today, it's like, man, are there any that I would point to that say, here's ones for everybody? And I'm not sure that there are, because as I think of my clients, when we do these kind of exercises, I don't think there's an aggregate where I would say, oh yeah, at least half of people have this one. Um, it's so individualized that, like, I was even trying to come up with ones I could just lob out there and would be useful to most people. And the answer is I don't think there are any.
Yeah, you know what? Like for the first time ever on one of these, I'm actually going to kind of take this topic and move it outside of here, right? Like after this, because I'm curious to see, just see what different people say they're grateful for, see what makes it what they just post it on Facebook or YouTube or something. If you're listening to this now or later, wherever you're finding it, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it, put a quick little list of things you're grateful for right now. Like I'd be curious. Yeah, would love to see that. Like and I'm also like, the more we've talked about it, I never thought about this before. And the way you've been describing it as things that are individualized, things that specifically kind of pull on your strings versus not at all. I'm curious to know how much gratitude might have personal themes to it. Like I love opportunity. Like that is a very important thing to me. And when I think about it, a lot of the things that I'm constantly grateful for or think about are opportunities. The opportunity to be more financially successful, the opportunity to secure things, make them safer for like me and like families of employees in my family. Just like I like the fact that we have opportunities is a very important thing to me. Whereas said that might not be what runs somebody else. Somebody else, it might be more in your case, almost like one of yours is things are better now than they were in the history. That's awesome.
Yep.
Like, I said, I wouldn't have thought about that most of the time. So I'm just curious, like different themes that people may have for what they're grateful for.
Yeah, if you get some interesting aggregates, you'll have to let me know.
Yeah, definitely. So, anything else you want to add in, or
You know me. I can't possibly ever quit the stream without recapping, can I? Uh, so, short version TLDR is a gratitude practice is important for thriving. It's not essential for surviving, but for good mental wellness, it's important for thriving. Doesn't have to be terribly complex, intricate, ritualized, although it can be. Doesn't have to take up too much of your day. It's just about bringing your thinking into positive lanes so that your emotions will drift in those directions.
um, For me, my recap is actually going to be about learning something because I said just until we were talking, it just never occurred to me how different in like the gratitude could be. So individualized, yes, for sure, but I never thought about it in terms of like differences like we did after this. So I'm really curious, like you said, to just find out more about it from other people. So
Sweet.
again, we'll be back here in a week or two, and hope you got something out of this. And we'll catch you guys later.
See y'all next time.